Mama never had a flower garden, 'cause cotton grew right up to our front door. Daddy never went on a vacation. He died a tired old man at 44. Our neighbors in the big house called us redneck, 'cause we lived in a poor sharecropper's shack. The Jacksons down the road were poor like we were, but our skin was white and there was black. But I believe the South is gonna rise again, but not the way we thought it would back then. I mean, everybody hand in hand. I believe the South is gonna rise again. I see wooded parks and big skyscrapers where dirty rundown shacks stood once before. I see sons and daughters of sharecroppers, but they're not picking cotton anymore. But more important, I see human kindness as we forget the bad and keep the good. A brand new breeze is blowing across the Southland, and I see a brand new kind of brotherhood. Yes, I believe the South is gonna rise again, but not the way we thought it would back then. I mean, everybody hand in hand. I believe the South is gonna rise again. I believe the South is gonna rise again. Welcome, brothers and sisters. Welcome, comrades and friends. Welcome back to Anti-imperialist America. I'm your host, Dust James, a Marxist Leninist truck driver, come to you live for legal purposes, not currently driving a big old semi truck. Um, Very glad to be here with everyone today. And as always, before I start the show, please like this video. Please share this video on your social media. And please get in contact with me about becoming part of the Anti-imperialist America working class anti-imperialist um, loose media collective. Join our Facebook group, get in our various chats groups, reach out to me, and we'll make it happen. We'll get you part of that. Um, I just sung a Tanya Tucker song. Tanya Tucker put out a that I first heard that song on Tanya Tucker's album "Lay with Me in a Field of Stones," and I didn't hear it on Pandora. I actually heard it on an 8-track that I got within a country set of old 8-tracks for like less than $1 a piece. Half of them didn't work. Actually, the 8-track of Tanya Tucker's album, "Lay with Me in a Field of Stones," only worked. It's over 50 years old. It only worked for about a few plays, and then the ribbon broke and became tangled, and I was unable to fix it. So I was only able to hear that old analog media once, and it was on the album "Lay with Me in a Field of Stones," and that song, which named the album, was written by the great David Allan Coe. David Allan Coe, a very complicated figure I've seen twice in concert. He's probably the architect and a pioneer and one of the largest contributors to the outlaw music genre. But getting back to "Lay with Me in a Field of Stones" by David Allan Coe, the album, the song "Lay with Me in a Field of Stones" a little bit, well, it has some sexual innuendo, and David Allan Coe, he spent the majority of his life in prison and in juvie, starting when he was only 9 years old, lived in destitute poverty, and then was part of another victim of the prison industrial complex. The prison industrial complex which is the brutality and suppression of the state to maintain national and class oppression. Now, the song off that album, it wasn't even a hit. It was like an extra song on the album. I think if you look, it's such a controversial song, "The South Will Rise Again." They actually turned off the comments on the YouTube. If you try to look at that on YouTube, there's a beautiful performance of her, way better than what I just sung. And I really love the song "The South Will Rise Again." Most of the time, when you hear something about the South will rise again, it's the racist neo-Confederates with a twisted version of what the South is. The idea that the federal government was the main enemy and the just cause of the South, an institution that was made for the sole purpose of maintaining race-based chattel slavery, and only the Confederacy only lasted 4 years. And that image has been twisted with the racist Confederate battle flag, pop culture, and shows like Dukes of Hazzard that was still popular up into the 80s. They were teaching the myth of the Confederacy in the school system. And I think that song by Tanya Tucker flips the neo-Confederate manipulation on its head. The neo-Confederate manipulation is very similar to the super patriotic jingoist manipulation. What patriotism, a more negative form of patriotism in neo-Confederatism do, is they convince people, like as far as broader American patriotism, it convinces people that their culture, the food they eat, the music they listen to, their very life and existence, their family, the way their family speaks, the various idiosyncrasies of the United States are deeply somehow tied and are one and the same with the monopoly capitalist imperialist parasite on humanity. And yes, that is the ruling body of the system, but that it does not represent the working class. And the same is even more true with the manipulation of neo-Confederatism. The unique, international, diverse, vibrant culture in the South, who a lot of the cultural capital comes from the great Afro-American people or Africans in America, built the South, are entwined. Black culture is the South. The food in the South comes from the fortitude and ingenious of Black people. Southern rock, blues, country music is impossible without the contributions of Africans in America. There is no way to truly appreciate and love the international culture, which is the South, without loving Black people. Like it's impossible. So the neo-Confederate says, "Oh, the South is going to rise again. The South is going to rise again. They got to the pair into Clinton's all this bullshit that has nothing to do." The Confederacy kept down poor whites. There was revolts against Southern women against the harsh conditions that the war, the revolt, the unjustified demonic revolt to maintain chattel-based slavery. And what Tanya Tucker did, so, a daughter of a white sharecropper who was kept in similar conditions alongside the oppressed people in the Black Belt South. Because I believe the South is going to rise again. I don't necessarily agree with her on the again part, but if you look at the South, what would it mean for all the people in the South to rise again? And what she says is not the way they thought it would back then. I mean, everybody hand in hand. And she looks towards dreams of a better future through economic development in the oppressed region of the South. Skyscrapers and parks and grassy parks and mechanization that removes the necessary human labor out of the cotton trade. No longer picking cotton. A dream of a South that is free of class and national oppression and is facilitated by economic development. I mean, that song speaks to the inner desires and progressive tendencies that is capable within Southern whites. And I think it's a very beautiful song. And it's really near and dear to my heart. I've been in I'm an economic refugee from northern Appalachia, or close to Appalachia. My family was one of the poorer folks in upstate New York, and we moved down here when I was 5 years old. In 1995, about the same time that there was a whole wave of Mexican immigrants from the Corn Belt in southern Mexico, and the more indigenous Mexico, and the poor regions of Mexico, and Guerrero, and Oaxaca. And Mexicans were economically pressured from their homelands to work in horrible jobs in North Carolina. And, being poor myself, didn't really get along with some of the more established labor aristocracy, white folks and black folks, and especially Mexican immigrants were very close friends of mine. And I ended up being partly raised. My family was so dysfunctional. I ended up being partly raised by an undocumented Mexican family. One of my friends, and I ended up, being part of the community, Mexicans in America, Mexican immigrants, and their children, Chicano children, being a part of the culture. I'm international to my core. I've been part of an international community within the belly of the beast, on the outskirts of the oppressed national region, which is the Black Belt South. And it's that's how I look at it. I have a Marxist-Leninist training that I got through some of the flame holders of Marxism, of American Marxism. And, and they kind of retreated into the labor movements. That was very hard at the height of the labor aristocracy and kind of the downfall. You could see the more revolutionary energy of the people coming from the oppressed people, the most exploited, and the oppressed regions, the Black Belt South, and in the ghettos and the North, that folks were forced into and segregated out of the larger American society. And there's a very close cultural connection, I believe, to Mexicans in America, in North Carolina, and the story of the Chicano people in the Southwest, where the border crossed them instead of them crossing the border. But even the newest immigrant today, because of the racism against brown people, they are under the Chicano condition, and it's an evolving nation, an oppressed people nation that is only now, because of demographic shifts, truly becoming the majority in their homeland after years of Anglo-imperialist domination and exploitation that continues with police brutality, national oppression, wage gaps, wealth gaps, various. You can look at the various forms of oppression. But today is my 33rd birthday, and my birthday coincides with the solar event of the summer solstice. The summer solstice is the longest day of the year, a huge holiday that comes mostly from a mix between Christianity and European pagan traditions. The winter solstice is a huge holiday in American and Western culture in general, and it's the winter is the hard time. The winter is where it's the darkest time of the year, especially in northern regions. And in Christmas, folks will bring the evergreen into their house as a representation that from here on out, things are going to get brighter. Well, even though it was the darkest time of the year, and this exact opposite of the summer solstice is we can celebrate the now, kind of the Chicano cultural saying of laugh now, cry later. The summer solstice represents the longest time of the year. It's really wonderful right now, but it's only going to get darker, which is kind of a sad situation. And I think it's only going to get darker truly applies to the conditions in America. We are in a decaying empire. Back after the post-World War II era, when the industrial capitalists were destroyed in Germany, in Japan, in England, one of the last industrial powers of the world that was largely unhit by the war in the United States, the industry was able to boom and sell to all these markets that were rebuilding, really saved capitalism from the economic crash, the inevitable economic crash in the Great Depression. And during that time period, the United States capitalists were so powerful that they were able to kick down some crumbs of those imperialist spoils that they steal throughout the world and create a labor aristocracy, a bought off sections of workers that was more loyal to their own capitalist class than the masses of poor black and brown people in the oppressed regions of the world. But now we're on the other side of that development. U.S. imperialism is falling. They know the monopoly capitalists no longer want to give a chunk of their diminishing profits to maintain a labor aristocracy. So we're experiencing turmoil, economic uncertainty, worse conditions. And most people see the United States as and dominance. A lot of people, and especially the corporate media and or liberal don't matter, imperialist media, the U.S. empire is the source of our prosperity. When I have a group of people and we only got, but those first to throw that imperialist system, a lot of the sentiment that's manipulated by figures, proto-fascist figures like Trump, is the idea we're going to make America great again. And that's similar to the song, which I love the song, but disagree with the again part in the title. The South will rise again. When was the South ever any good for anybody, except before white folks got here and indigenous folks was here? When was the South ever good for the masses of Afro-American people who built the South and built Southern culture? You know, and what about the working class and oppressed people who built the United States? When was the United States ever good for them? It wasn't. The again part is really the key to the racist, proto-fascist idea that we're going to return to a time when American hegemony was at its peak, which isn't going to happen. It's a lie. It's a manipulation. And it's to get people to support opportunist figures like Donald Trump, who's completely self-serving. Donald, it may seem like Donald some repression now, but that isn't because he's an anti-imperialist. That isn't because he defied the oppressive white supremacist, imperialist, monopoly capitalist system. It is because he put himself, and he is a racist, and he is a white supremacist, and he is an imperialist. But he simply put his own interest over the collective interest of the ruling class. And that is why he is being suppressed now, but he's certainly no friend of the people. And when Trump was in office, it was very clear that he was, because of his so self-interest, he was very clear that he was willing to go along with the dictates of imperialism anytime. If we look at the situation over I think the first issue of an impeachment against Trump, to get dirt on the Biden family, another corrupt dynasty, blatantly racist, the current president, who said he doesn't want his children living in a racial jungle. And another corrupt to get dirt on a rival, corrupt, racist, imperialist family. He's like, oh, I ain't going to give the Ukrainian fascists their money right away. Maybe I can get the dirt first. And then, the rest of through the Democratic Party and the legal systems, they put the screws to Trump and said, hey, the amount of funding U.S. power. And I think Trump is an interesting figure and tool that the establishment used. If you look at Hillary Clinton, actually the media to elevate within folks, little bit of delay with my signal. So, like I was saying, Hillary Clinton might have thought that Trump would be an easy opponent in the election. But at the same time, Hillary Clinton and her representatives, Trump becoming, they didn't mind one of the most vile, racist, anti-immigrant people that have won the presidency in over 50 years, in a half century, the win, if it could somehow benefit them. And the Democratic Party has been backing this proto-fascist, fake establishment, Trumpist movement throughout the country. These proto-fascist figures work hand in hand with each other to maintain the imperialist system. I mean, this is similar to the somewhat lackluster divide amongst the ruling class within the Bush era. If we look back to the Bush era, there was certain elements within the ruling class that didn't want to invade Iraq because they thought they in favor of more soft power strategy. But they weren't superposed to it happening. And they're like, and the various forces within the ruling class jockeying for power and position in and over the policies that the U.S. empire would go about, didn't mind the war in Iraq happening. And when the war in Iraq did happen, they were overjoyed, supporting it. You know, 9/11. We know they at least knew about it, the trigger to it, but that's what I'm saying. These faux divisions in the ruling class aren't true divisions. They exist, but they're still on the same team. They still work hand in hand to oppress the working class here, to oppress the super exploited people here, and to suppress the super exploited, oppressed nations in Latin America and Africa and in Asia. Still the same group of folks. I mean, Trump was the perfect controlled opposition for the dominant wing of the imperialist duopoly, the Democrats. They were able to put up this vile, racist, anti-immigrant, sexist person and figure that the majority of working class and oppressed people rightfully reviled. But then the Democratic Party was able to say Trump is something new, something different, an anomaly to the racist, imperialist American system, when Trump is the very embodiment of what America is and its current state. America, the political economic system, racist, sexist, vile, inhuman, pompous, with no substance. Trump is the embodiment of the American political economic system. And then they told people, hey, if you're tired of the racism that you experience, they told the Democratic Party told the oppressed masses of African American people, the oppressed masses of Chicano people, whose communities and family members were being deported under both regimes, Democratic and Republican alike. Oh, if you hate this embodiment of what the American system is, you need to vote against Trump and for the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party, which is the lead portion of the imperialist duopoly, the political system behind, the political force behind humanity's greatest enemy, imperialism led by U.S. imperialism. So Trump was a major pawn and tool and manipulation. And they were able to use Trump to divide the working class against the oppressed people. If we look at oppressed people, Chicano people, especially working class Chicanos, working class Latin American immigrant communities, if we look at the Black Belt South and the black communities and the ghettos, 90% of black people voted against Trump. Vast majority of oppressed people could not tolerate the absolute vileness, which is Trump's racism. But the masses of largely white Americans could overlook Trump's racism. And they believed he's pandering. He's pandering on peace, shallow pandering. Oh, Obama did the same thing, the pandering for peace. Oh, he was the peace candidate and expanded the war. Trump also expanded the war. Ivanka's daughter went out and told women if they voted Trump, they would get free child care. A complete, absolute lie of a politician. And he said, I'm against neoliberalism. I'm against NATO. I want to return the jobs that have been lost in the Rust Belt. And largely the masses of white folks, it wasn't even the majority of people. If you look at the majority of people, even in the 2020 and 2016 election, did not vote. So I'm not going to overemphasize the popularity of Trump. And also his most vile position, anti-immigrant position, that he, and vile xenophobia and repression of some of the most exploited workers. Anti-immigrant position was some of the least popular positions, even among Trump voters. I think the Trump voting bloc is one of the more reactionary portions of the American working class, and the Trump voting bloc largely is a minority, and a shrinking minority at that, even in rural areas, because the majority of people don't vote. So a good portion of white folks, and even people within the black and brown community, could look past Trump's racism to be like, and believed his lies. This is an opposition figure. This is a figure for change. The Democratic Party, which brought us NAFTA, which killed the job, which set the jobs overseas. This is our way out. This is going to improve America. This is going to make America great. So they were able to divide the oppressed people, the urban workers, against the largely white and rural workers. And they said, the Democrats said the problem with America is Trump. And what the Republican politician said, the problem with America is the Democrats. And they were to get these two working class voting bases and with various cultural separations to blame the system on each other instead of blaming on what the problem really is, which is the very heart and soul of the political economic settler system in the United States, which is the genocide of indigenous people, hundreds of years of slavery, and now the core of empire, humanity's number one enemy, which exploits the workers here and oppress people here and exploits the oppressed nations around the world. That is the political manipulation. And now I'm glad to see that many folks in these troubling times are waking up to this manipulation. And they're looking outside of the imperialist duopoly for answers. And we still have grifters like the People's Party with the abusive Nick Brana, and some of these middle class, professional class grifters like Caleb Maupin, who I had the unfortunate experience of working. And there's some people, these opportunist grifters, taking advantage of these new political conditions. But there's also the masses of people and organizations that represent the people and figures aligned with the people that are ready to come out against the system. And I think the Green Party, that's been tirelessly working for decades, I think when Cynthia McKinney, somewhat conspiracy minded, but with the people and deeply connected to the black folks in Georgia that she represented, one of the heart of the Black Belt South, they were able to run her against Obama in 2008. It largely went unnoticed. And now we're approaching the 2021 election, 2024 election. Wow, it's already been that long. All right, give me a minute. I gotta do some stuff. I'll be right back. Sorry for the interruption. All right, sorry for that interruption. I'm back, folks. So I was saying, the Green Party was able to push the imperialist duopoly left, introduce some progressive policies that the opportunist and imperialist Democratic Party is watered down. They were able to run Cynthia McKinney in 2008 against the Obama deception. They've had their ups and downs, but I think I'm pretty inspired by Brother Cornel West, more of a Christian philosopher and academic who started out with the People's Party, but was able to see through the abusive, anti-worker, suppressing black voices sham, which is the People's Party. He was able to see through that and drop it. And I'm really energized by the good comrades at Black Power Media who interviewed RJ, which was a black campaign worker whose voice and black agenda was suppressed by Nick Braun and the People's Party. I'm glad that was able to happen. But I'm energized about Cornel West and the Green Party run. But honestly, I think the real solution is people need to get involved in their community, engage in class struggle, build an organization, get involved in the labor movement, get out of grassroots. I think that's even more important than anything within the rigged electoral process. But electoral process is a way to do outreach and raise awareness and build some independent infrastructure to an extent. I got to get back to work. Sorry, I was unable to finish my thought on this. I'll continue at a later date. And as always, comrades, all power to the people.